You know, we hear the term business intelligence all the time, right? It's everywhere. But what if I told you that our entire understanding of it, what we focus on, is actually kind of backward? Today, we're going to dig into the hidden power behind what makes BI truly intelligent, and it all comes down to the power of distinction. So let's just start with this question, and I want you to really think about it. Is the business intelligence you're using in your company actually intelligent? Or is it maybe something else entirely, just dressed up with a fancy name?
Because for most people, when you say BI, their brain immediately goes to the tools. We picture those slick dashboards, all the detailed reports, those OLAP cubes for slicing and dicing data. And hey, that stuff is part of it, for sure. But it's just the tip of the iceberg. It's not the whole story, not even close.
To really get it, we have to look beyond the dashboard. We need to expand our definition. So let's explore a much richer idea of business intelligence, one that's actually built on 3 different core types of intelligence.
Okay, so let's try a new definition. Forget the tools for a second. True business intelligence isn't about software. It's about an organization's ability. It's the skill to react to a situation, to a change, and make the right choices. See how that shifts the focus? It moves us away from just passively looking at data and toward active, intelligent decision-making.
In this ability, it stands on 3 legs. The first one is business IQ. That's the one we all know. It's our data, our reports, our analysis tools. But now look at the other 2. Reflection intelligence. That's the company's ability to be self-aware, to stop and ask, wait, why are we even doing this? And then there's experience intelligence, which is basically its memory, the wisdom it collects from every win and every failure. Most companies get stuck on IQ, but you absolutely need all 3 to be truly intelligent. So what's the secret sauce here? What's the engine that's actually driving all 3 of these intelligences? Well, it turns out there's one core principle that lies underneath everything. And honestly, it's probably the biggest takeaway from our entire conversation today. All right, here it is. The absolute foundation, the real engine behind genuine BI is something called distinction intelligence. This is the whole game. It's not about how much data you can collect. It's about how well you can draw meaningful lines and create separations within that data. And look, this isn't some brand new corporate buzzword. This idea actually goes way back to 1969, to a mathematician named George Spencer Brown. He argued that the most fundamental thing we do to know or understand anything is the simple act of making a distinction, of separating a this from a that. And it works in a really simple 2-step rhythm. First, you have distinction. Think of it like drawing a circle in the sand. You're defining what's inside the circle versus what's outside. So for a business, you might distinguish our customers from everyone else. But then comes the second step, indication. This is where you look at the relationship between the 2 sides you just created. How do our customers interact with the rest of the market? By doing both, you create a brand new, way more powerful understanding. I know. That might still sound a little abstract. So let's make this totally concrete with a fantastic analogy that will make it all click. Let's talk about electricity.
Okay, if you want to understand electricity, you can't just stare at a power line. It won't tell you much. The very first thing you have to do is make a mental distinction. You have to separate the concept of current, that's the flow of the charge, from the concept of voltage, that's the pressure pushing it. They aren't the same thing. That simple act of separating them is distinction. And this is where the magic happens. It's only after you've separated current and voltage in your mind that you can start to see how they're connected, how they relate to each other. That's the indication part. And their interplay, that very connection, is what we call electricity. You see? You literally can't grasp the whole until you first distinguish the parts. So that's a cool analogy, but let's bring it back. How does this apply to the crazy business world we're all living in? Why does this more philosophical view of BI matter so much right now?
Well, it matters because today's markets are moving at warp speed. The time you have to react to anything is shrinking every single day. We're all drowning in information, so the most important skill is figuring out what's actually relevant. And you can't just watch your competitors anymore. You have to be observing the whole market, the economy, even social trends. To do any of that well, you have to be making the right distinctions, and you have to be doing it fast.
And that's exactly why the old way of doing BI, just piling on more tools and dashboards, is totally failing us now. Throwing more tools at big data doesn't create clarity. If you don't have a sharp distinction intelligence, big data isn't an asset. It's just big noise.
It's like a giant ocean of information with no land in sight.
So I'll just leave you with this final thought. Ask yourself, is your organization just passively observing an endless sea of data points? Or is it actively creating its world, defining its customers, its strategy, its future through the intellectual, powerful act of distinction? Because the difference between those two is everything. It's the difference between just reporting on what already happened and actually creating what happens next.